request Mr. Abu Bakr Mohammed, the director of WIT, to come and give us an overview of the center and its vision and some of the activities that it will carry out.
What a great moment for LUMS, and what a great moment for SSC and for all of us that we are standing today really looking at this center in reality. I have deliberately chosen the title of my talk, Building a 21st Century Smart Water Grid for the Indus Basin. And because the name of the center, as it implies, it is going to do something about water. It is a little bit different, a little bit modern, a little bit 21st century. What I'll do is that I will first try to make you appreciate, those of you who do not know, about the scales of managing the world's largest irrigation network or the basin. Then the promise of smart infrastructures, especially ICT, information and communication technologies, coming to the aid of traditional hydraulics, hydrology. And then I will maybe give one example or two of a smart water grid, what those smarts actually would look like. And that would actually let me generalize what is the need for this data-driven governance of water that we are going to talk about, and finally to the WIT mission, that what are we going to do here. First of all, I always like to start with this picture. Look at river basins. As an engineer, as a scientist, if you look at it, this is really a very, very complex system of systems. And just try to appreciate that it is not just the physical elements that we are talking about. So I've put the physical elements on top there. Yes, of course, there is this beautiful interplay of water, salt, and silt. That's one thing. There is the surface water, there is the groundwater. But then there are people living on this basin as well. There are institutions which are governing the basin. There are many, many things going on here. And then I revert to this picture, the Mughal garden. I mean, that's probably how we should think about the basin. I mean, the culture, the history of how the basin has come about. So it's not just the physics of it or the chemistry of it, but really the people that are forming this basin. Now, I always also like to say that such very complex systems of systems, they are both a nightmare and a dream. Now, well, why a nightmare? Because this is such a complex system to look at. When I say it's a very complex system of systems, so, well, if there are problems associated with it, well, where do you even begin to address some of the problems that may be challenging the basin? But then for somebody who wants to do academic work on it, somebody who wants to do challenging problem solving, then that's really the dream. That you have this problem to look at on which you can do very, very challenging work. You can find beautiful patterns. You can generate a lot of wisdom out of it. So that's why I say that it's both a nightmare, well, to begin with, and a dream as well. Okay. Now, again, just to let you appreciate the complexity of the system, I mentioned that there is whole river basin, not just the surface water, the glaciers, the people, and all of that. Let's just take just one little piece out of that. Just one little piece out of that. I'm not talking about the whole basin. And that little piece is the world's largest irrigation network. So the canal network that we have in the Indus Basin, that's the little piece out of it, and that by itself, you just look at the numbers, how big it is and how large it is. Tens of thousands of kilometers of water courses, number of reservoirs, canal commands, and really, if you look at the satellite image, the whole country is actually around this irrigation network. And really, the problems or the challenge of managing this particular irrigation canal network, that by itself is a grand problem. So what to talk about the whole basin, the irrigation network by itself is such a large thing. Now, this network was really laid by the British in the 19th century. Again, there is a whole beautiful history associated with how it came about. And then after partition, we made a lot of additions. By we mean the Pakistanis. After partition, made a lot of additions to this system. So the infrastructure was sort of laid out. The management practices were basically around practices of hydrology and hydraulics. And when we are looking at the problems, what we are facing with managing this large irrigation network at the moment, and this is very well known that everything is not well, well, the question that I want to pose is that, okay, now that we have all of these smart technologies, if we now begin to equip the system, if we now try to instrument the system, what can informatics do for this? What can these ICT driven gadgets, information and communication technologies. If we make this infrastructure smart, as I say, well, how can they aid the hydraulics? Now, for the electrical engineers, computer scientists here, there is actually a very beautiful problem that we have here. They must have heard about the whole area of what they call as cyber-physical systems or Internet of Things, in which infrastructures, not just water, but energy and road networks and so on and so forth, they can be looked at as networks of both physical elements as well as cyber elements. So, for example, for our river basin, the physical elements are, of course, the rivers, the water courses, the barrages, the weirs, and so on and so forth. But now, if we equip them with these smart elements, what are we bringing in? We are bringing in a lot of sensors, smart devices collecting data, a lot of controllers which are trying to manipulate the physical system, a lot of communication services. But I would actually want to go even one step further, that this is not just a cyber-physical system, as my community call it. This would be a cyber-physical social system, because the people are also part of it. And the behavior of how people are going to, or they're already interacting with the cyber and the physical elements, that's a big technical challenge and really at the forefront of research and technology. So that's just my reminder to those who are interested on the research side of things in the ICT technologies, that there is a big opportunity of doing good research looking at river basins, but as cyber-physical systems. Now, if we have these smarts working for us, well, what type of problems can we solve? Well, of course, I mean, these are all, we don't have the smarts working yet, or maybe only in some cases, but the prediction is, well, we can increase our distribution efficiency, of course. We can talk about demand-based delivery instead of supply-driven systems. We can even control non-technical losses, thefts, as people call it, system health monitoring, flood breach control, a lot of improvement and enforcement of water rights, many things that we can do, a lot of ways of dealing with variability, as I would say. Things which are happening in time, unpredictable, which are happening over space, unpredictable, and then we can deal with those things. I would actually start with my main example here, something courtesy of PMIU, Punjab Irrigation Department, and this was also the start of one of our collaboration, which got me thinking into this whole smart irrigation business. Now, this is how the irrigation department is collecting information about the flows in the canals at the moment. So, about a decade back, under the guidance of one of our advisory group members, Arif Saab, this digitalization process, it actually enabled the daily collection of data to be digitized and put on a website, for example. But the very last leg of that problem of where you actually take the physical measurement, this is how things are. That there is still a gauge reader that goes 8 a.m. in the morning, the Pansal Navis, it takes an actual measurement and reports it back via phone or an SMS or whatever, and that is actually published. Now, that was the starting point of our discussion with the Punjab Irrigation Department, and then they basically proposed that can you automate this last leg now, that measurements can be transmitted automatically to a central server. And this is what we came up with. And this was a very good demonstration of these smarts, where in collaboration with IMI, the International Water Management Institute, and in very close coordination with the Punjab Irrigation Department, we actually demonstrated in 2014 for a whole year the working of a real smart water grid in some sense. Not the whole part, but at least the sensing part of it, a full telemetry network in which we installed sensors in distributary canals, which actually collected data automatically, transmitted the data to a central server, and sitting here at LUMS, we were able to look at our screens of what's going on in East Sadakia region, Hakra branch, and we were able to solve a lot of technical challenges around that problem as well. Now, that was only the beginning of this whole hydroinformatics business, in the sense that, well, once we had collected the data, then we started to look at the data of what data was saying. And this is just one small demonstration of what is possible now. For the very first time, we are looking at canal data at a 10-minute resolution, really very fine resolution for hydraulics. And we were able to overlay this data over rosters issued by the Punjab Irrigation Department, the Varabandi schedules of how, whether the canal should have been filled or not have been filled. And we actually overlaid it to find out, and these colors, maybe you cannot see them very clearly, the reds, greens, and the blues. The reds actually mean that a roster was supposed to say that this particular canal should not be getting water, And the greens mean that the canal should be filled, it should be flowing at full capacity. And we were able to see whether those schedules were kept or not kept. And then now, once you've collected the data, then you can look at irrigation efficiencies from that perspective. You can now even talk about some sort of rescheduling midway of whether these schedules can be improved and so on and so forth. Now, this actually gave us a lot of insight on what is actually possible. Just collecting the data is just a starting point, but a lot can be done as follow-up steps of this data collection. And you can go now towards full decision support based on these sort of interventions. Now, I have a few more examples, but I will not go into them. Just taking that example as a prototype, what I propose here is, and this is not my compilation, this is from a World Bank study, that if you look at the main water problems, they basically can be categorized into 3 categories. And this is because of the governance trends that we have. So now, because of devolution, because of increased fine resolution of decision support, in the sense that there is this idea of participatory management, that decisions are no longer being taken place at one body, but really at different levels. So, for example, IRSA has to make a decision on how to divide water in the rivers and the big canals, but also look at the small farmer associations, the water user associations, the Kal Panchayats. They actually also have to make some certain decisions. Now, IRSA or the Punjab Irrigation Department can invest in a $1 billion or a billion rupee decision support system for them to make good decisions. But what about that little farmer association that has to make that similar sort of decisions? So they need that support as well. The second category is water entitlements, and that, as Dr. Naqvi was mentioning, this transboundary issues or between the provinces, and the whole idea of water rights. And thirdly, accountability. Once something has taken place, well, we need to know, well, what has really happened, some sort of forensics. And if you look at all of these 3 categories, presence of data, collection of data, this is absolutely essential to solve problems related to or issues related to all of these 3 categories. Now, also generalizing from that particular canal telemetry project, I also want to say that this whole business of bringing in the smarts, it's also a scaling problem. A scaling problem in the sense that our basin is such big, and the time scales are so fine, and there are so many people who are looking at it, and so many people who need to be serviced. We really need to scale up our solutions. And the only way that we can scale up our solutions is via these information and communication technologies. So for example, spatial scales, it's very clear, it's the world's largest irrigation network, it's a very, very big basin. So of course, that's the geographical scale. Time scale, the inability to collect information. How many gauge readers would you recruit to go and take measurements every 10 minutes? That's not possible. It's only possible by these information and communication technologies. And also the scaling of expertise. So, I mean, again, that example of one decision support system at a central federal body, maybe that's possible, but how do you actually equip many of such decision-making bodies who are not really, do not have the expertise to do that? And really these technologies like sensing and automation and data analytics, ICT, they can be answered to some of the problems, not of course all of the problems. And here is where enters WIT. And this is now a general vision of what this center, just taking this one example, learning a few lessons, and what we think that the center should be able to do. Now, first of all, we start with, well, what are the critical problems? I have listed maybe 3 problems here. You may or may not agree with my list of problems. And of course, we will be taking guidance from the real water experts to tell us what those problems are. But we will agree that these are actually problems to look at. So water quality, irrigation efficiency, and groundwater. Let's start with these 3 and pick any one of them. And now the first step should be, or that is the traditional way of looking about, is that we always use our physical knowledge, our scientific knowledge, to actually pose problems using hydraulics and hydrology. And that is how we have been looking at things traditionally. What the center here proposes is that, of course, we are not going to do away with hydraulics or hydrology, but we are instead going to look at those same problems, not in terms of the MAFs or the liters, but in terms of dollars and cents. And that actually makes the problem very understandable. I mean, why does the count of dolphins in the river Indus, that make sense? Well, I mean, it's not enough to put in some hydraulic parameters for river health or whatever. You really have to calculate the cost of that ecosystem service. Okay? And then on the other side, then there are going to be people like me who are in these information and communication technologies, use this whole discipline of hydroinformatics or just ICT, I would say, to generate data, to generate methods, to generate algorithms, to generate gadgets, robots, data collection devices, smartphones, whatever that need to be done. And then there is going to be a synthesis of, well, you look at the problem and then try to solve the problem using the data, using the algorithms and the gadgets to do what? Well, you can do, of course, technology interventions. You can suggest things like telemetry systems, things like some new contamination monitoring technology, some filtration technology, some desalination technology or whatever. You can also generate policy advice, and that's sort of the traditional way of going about. But really this synthesis of data and formulating the problems in the right way, that is really the key and a different thing that we are sort of proposing here. But we are not going to stop here. What we say is that, okay, I've listed the problems as main water problems. But really water, as Dr. Naqvi was mentioning, I mean, any problem, any developmental problem of Pakistan that you point out, whether it is climate change or it is energy, it all links back to water. So you cannot look at individual water problems without their context or without, as the buzzword these days, the nexus with food, with climate change, with environment, with urbanization, with energy, and so on and so forth. So that will actually bring in, widen the scope of the center in some sense. It's not, so it's a center for water, but we want to look at holistical sort of issues. And I want to go even one step further and be a little bit even bolder than that. And what I want to say is that maybe even economics is not the right way of formulating problems. Well, of course, we started with the science, the hydrology and the hydraulics. We rejected that and we said, no, let's put dollars and cents on that. But even going ahead, now I'm saying that we need more. We're not going to do away with hydraulics or economics. But what I want to say is that there are very interesting narratives from sociology, from ethics, from philosophy, from law, that are going to help us formulate these problems. And that is the advantage of sitting at LUMS, where we have all of these disciplines together. And then what will be the outcome of this? So out of the systems analysis box, where previously only technology interventions and policy advice was coming in, my hope is that someday we would also be able to understand historical narratives, how this basin has actually come about and where this basin is going in our particular cultural context. Philosophical frameworks. If we want to set up a certain optimization framework, and if I have to pick an equation for the welfare function, well, that welfare function has to be based on an agreed upon philosophical framework that has to be rooted in our thinking, in our culture, in how we understand the world, and so on and so forth. So it's not just the science, it's not just the informatics, the vision is much more beyond that. So this is where I will actually end my presentation in sort of giving you a sort of a high-level vision of where this center is going. Again, we are very, very lucky that at LUMS, within the SSC, the School of Science and Engineering, we already are very proud of our no boundaries sort of approach. But we're really hoping for, and we are very excited about engaging other disciplines, other schools on the LUMS campus to actually look at these problems in a more sort of holistic manner. Thank you.